Jack Kirby was called the King for a reason, and when he left Marvel to go to DC in the very early 70s, it made waves. What he debuted as writer, artist, and editor was a phenomenon retroactively known as the Fourth World, and it was epic. The Fourth World all happened in a fairly short period of time. So why is it still such a big deal? Let's find out. What exactly is the Fourth World? Is it an event, a storyline, a crossover? I'm not certain what the most accurate term for it is, but some online resources refer to it as a meta-series. What is a meta-series? Heck if I know. I guess it's like a series, only meta? What I do know is that the Fourth World came from the mind of the king, Jack Kirby. The concept was revealed to the world at a time in which Jack Kirby had grown very weary of being victimized by Marvel and decided to go be victimized by DC for a while. One reason the Fourth World saga is difficult to categorize, even more so in the era in which it was created, is that it had an unprecedented structure. It introduced several new series, all centered on a single premise, all at once. Though it's viewed as an extension of the between-the-lines continuity Kirby and Stan Lee had pioneered at Marvel in the 1960s, the Fourth World went one better by offering several variations on the same theme simultaneously. In retrospect, it's pretty obvious the creative gears in Kirby's mind were already working on the Fourth World while he was still at Marvel. According to an article published in the New York Times, fancy stuff for comics, ain't it? Quote, "The idea of the new gods had come to Jack years earlier, when he was plotting 90% of the Tales of Asgard stories in Thor. The first page of Orion of the New Gods showed the same scenes from Thor, a planet torn in half and armored gods holding swords and dying on a fiery battleground. One key is that Kirby took notice of declining comic book sales at newsstands and spinner racks, so he started to think about creating a finite series that would be serialized and collected in one tome after the series had concluded. He basically predicted the omnibus and to a lesser extent trade paperbacks and similar collected formats. At its core, the Fourth World was a story of good versus evil, with the deeper theme that free will is good and lack of autonomy is evil. These concepts were represented by the worlds of New Genesis and Apokolips, with the evil Lord of Apokolips, Darkseid, seeking the anti-life equation, which will allow him to control the thoughts of all living beings. Why is it called the anti-life equation? Well, according to one of Kirby's Fourth World titles, Forever People, in issue number 5, it says, "If someone possesses absolute control over you, you're not really alive." And now, for the first time, I will reveal the anti-life equation. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Just kidding. That's the quadratic equation, and though it did make me hate life in junior high, it is not a portal to mind control. Opposing Darkseid is Orion, who, in a twist that predates Star Wars by 6 years, is Darkseid's son. He was raised by Highfather of New Genesis in an exchange of hostages kind of deal. Think Theon Greyjoy, only with absolutely none of the traits of Theon Greyjoy. The Fourth World kicked off in what may seem the unlikeliest of places, Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen number 133 in the fall of 1970, which also reintroduced the Newsboy Legion, but more on them later. In this issue, Jimmy is sent to report from the Wild area, a place rumored to be sanctuary for weird motorcycle groups. Having hung around a few weird motorcycle groups in my time, I say choose your tattoo wisely, Jimmy. After a trial by combat, Jimmy becomes the leader of a weird motorcycle group called the Outsiders, not to be confused with Batman's Outsiders or S.E. Hinton's for that matter. In the following issue, Jimmy, his motorcycle gang, Superman, and a mysterious group called the Harrys are attacked in a plot that is revealed to have been orchestrated by Darkseid via his proxy in Metropolis, Morgan Edge. The following saga, or sagas maybe, plays out primarily across 3 titles: The Forever People, the New Gods, and Mr. Miracle, who was, technically, a new god, I suppose, but he kind of had his own thing going on. The Forever People are a group of young new gods from New Genesis who are on a mission to oppose Darkseid on Earth. The members of this group talked, dressed, and acted much like, according to at least one source, the Flower Children of the 1960s. To be honest, they don't seem that much like hippies to me, but I wasn't alive in the 60s, so I'm no expert, though I am a pretty big fan of the Freedom Rock commercial. The group included Beautiful Dreamer, a dark-haired lady with psionic powers. She can create illusions. Big Bear, a red-haired thick boy with the most impressive neckbeard I've ever seen. Big Bear's atomic structure is reinforced by a constant flow of high-density atoms, and he can direct these at will to reinforce the powers of his already awesome punch. He is essentially the group's tank. Mark Moonrider, a dashing everyman in a weird headgear thing. He possesses a megaton touch. With it, he can cause a tremendous explosion. He's also part of a time-displaced love triangle with Big Bear and Beautiful Dreamer. Seraphim is the youngest member of the group. Hey, every boy band needs a Joey McIntyre, right? Seraphim possesses limited telepathic powers, and he carries cosmic cartridges in his hat. What are cosmic cartridges, you ask? They're like bullets he can fire from his revolver that do fancy things like create a protective shock repel field. I don't know what that is. He can drain someone's energy with them or create an anti-gravity effect. Also, the cartridges tune the wielder into the cosmic harmony. I saw Cosmic Harmony back in 1979. They were far out, man. Team member Viking the Black was the first black superhero to appear in a DC comic book. Though his name seems like a play on the word Viking, he didn't really have a Viking theme. He does, however, possess magno power, which enables him to project magnetic energy. Infinity Man is a super being who appeared whenever the Forever People joined together around their mother box and uttered the key word Taru. They kind of Voltron together into an Infinity Man, really. A later retcon revealed that Infinity Man is actually the older brother of Darkseid, and became Infinity Man as a result of Darkseid's treachery. He's far more handsome than Darkseid, but older brothers always are the more handsome, aren't they? The Forever People appear in the Justice League episode Twilight Part 2, as well as the Young Justice episode Disordered. With the Forever People, Kirby revived the Simon and Kirby Kid Gang formula he had used with the Boy Commandos and the Newsboy Legion. See? I told you they would come up again. The New Gods is a catch-all term for natives of the twin planets of New Genesis and Apokolips. New Genesis is a beautiful planet filled with forests and mountains and rivers, and it's ruled by the benevolent Highfather, while Apokolips is a nightmarish, polluted, and ruined dystopia filled with machinery and fire pits, and it's ruled by the tyrannical Darkseid. You can think of Apokolips as Newark, and New Genesis as the rest of the Garden State. The two planets were once part of the same world, a planet called God World, but it was split apart millennia ago after the death of the old gods during Ragnarok. See? I told you it all started with Thor. Team New Genesis featured Highfather, Orion, and Metron. Well, Metron kind of dabbled in both sides, really. Team Apokolips had Darkseid, Steppenwolf, and Granny Goodness. Highfather was, as previously stated, the leader of New Genesis. He was also the yin to Darkseid's yang, or maybe the yang to his yin. I don't really know which is the good one, yin or yang, but Highfather was the good guy. The war between New Genesis and Apokolips began when an agent of Darkseid killed Highfather's wife. After serving as a general in the horrific war that followed, he forsook his warrior ways. While wandering the ravaged lands of New Genesis looking for meaning, Isaiah, the man who would later be known as Highfather, came across a mysterious wall where fiery messages appeared. Messages from the Source, the mysterious benevolent force overseeing the universe. He was linked to the Source, becoming a peacemaker and a planetary leader under the title of Highfather. Orion was the second son of Darkseid, but he was raised by Highfather. As a child, Orion was traded to New Genesis benevolent leader Highfather for Scott Free, Highfather's own son, in the peace pact between New Genesis and Apokolips. Highfather taught Orion to control and focus his rage, and Orion grew to deeply value his adoptive home and its ideals. Orion's inherited traits from Darkseid and learned traits from Highfather allowed him to become the most powerful warrior and hero of New Genesis. His fighting skill, stamina, restlessness, and ruthlessness have earned him the nickname the Dog of War. Metron is, I guess you would say, the scholar of the group. For the most part, he avoids direct involvement in the conflict and is more like an observer, maybe a watcher, sort of. Metron is well known riding on his Mobius chair, a time-space dimensional vehicle that allows him to travel and observe the universe. The Mobius chair gives its user near omniscient sight and understanding of the universe. Also, Metron invented the boom tube, a technology that allows new gods to travel point to point by extra-dimensional means, and produces a boom sound when it's used. Metron was based to some degree on Spock from Star Trek. Not any other Spocks that you might have thought of, I mean. Jeez. Darkseid was the big baddie, the leader of Apokolips. His ultimate goal is to conquer the universe by eliminating all hope and free will in sentient beings. Doing this, of course, with the anti-life equation. According to writer Mark Evanier, Kirby modeled Darkseid's face on actor Jack Palance, while the villain's personality was inspired by Adolf Hitler and Richard Nixon. Boy, Kirby really covered some ground with that one. He started out as Prince Uxas. Prince Uxas, second in line to the throne of Apokolips. Uxas plotted to seize control over the planet from his older brother Drax. When Drax attempted to claim the fabled Omega Force, Uxas murdered him and claimed its power for himself. His skin turned to stone and Uxas rechristened himself as Darkseid. So he has his sort of dark origin story to mirror that of Highfather. Darkseid ordered his servant Darkseid to poison his mother so he could finally become the supreme monarch of Apokolips. I'm telling you, Game of Thrones has nothing on the Fourth World. Steppenwolf is Darkseid's uncle, and he leads the military forces of Apokolips and rides hounds bred for battle. Steppenwolf died in his first appearance. He helps murder the wife of Highfather. Then, Highfather tracks down and kills Steppenwolf in retaliation, and the murder reignites the war between the two sides. But he's still around because he was resurrected by apocalyptic technology. But this was kind of a retcon because I guess people forgot Steppenwolf was dead, so he kept showing up, and they later had to come up with this hand-waving explanation. He was also killed by Clock King once. Don't ask me how, I can't explain it. But he seems to have been resurrected from that too. Granny Goodness is one of my faves, probably because she was portrayed by Ed Asner in Superman, the animated series, and Justice League Unlimited. Originally one of the lowlies, the brutally oppressed peasant class on Apokolips, Granny made her way up the social ladder. She was removed from her parents and trained to be one of Darkseid's elite soldiers called Hounds. In a story similar to Kingsman, part of her training was to train her dog. At the end of her training, she was ordered to kill her dog, but instead she killed her instructor for ordering this. Good for you, Granny. But it's not a happy ending, because Darkseid ordered the dog to kill Granny Goodness, and she killed the pooch in self-defense. Good for Granny again, I guess? Darkseid had Goodness run the training facility for his elite soldiers, which were set up like orphanages. Granny Goodness used brainwashing and torture in a brutal parody of childcare to turn the children into fanatical warriors willing to kill or die for Darkseid's glory. Jeez, and I thought Miss Hannigan was bad. Granny Goodness's appearance was based on 70s variety show mainstay Phyllis Diller. Mr. Miracle was the stage name, I guess you'd say, for Highfather's son Scott Free, who was traded to Darkseid in exchange for Orion. Growing up on Apokolips was not easy for Scott. He was raised in one of Granny Goodness's orphanages with no knowledge of his true parentage. Despite Granny's torture policies, he refused to allow his spirit to be broken. As he matured, Scott rebelled against the totalitarian ideology of Apokolips. He grew to hate himself because he just didn't fit in, but he was influenced by Metron to see a future beyond Darkseid. Scott joined the secret Apokolips resistance, and it was at one of these meetings that he met his main squeeze, Big Barda. Eventually, he escaped to Earth, which nullified the peace pact between Darkseid and Highfather, allowing the cosmic war to reignite. On Earth, Scott Free met circus escape artist Thaddeus Brown, whose stage name was Mr. Miracle. When Brown was murdered, Scott put on Brown's costume and took up the name Mr. Miracle. Eventually, tired of being chased on Earth by Darkseid's servants, Scott returned to Apokolips and won his freedom through trial by combat. Scott Free is alleged to be based on comic book artist Jim Steranko, who did spend part of his life working as an escape artist, and Big Barda was based on Kirby's own wife, Roz. I loved her in Night Court. I guess I would be derelict in my duties if I talked about the Fourth World and failed to mention mother boxes. Mother boxes are sentient, autonomous computers, typically found on New Genesis, sometimes referred to as living computers. They look like small boxes about the size of a brick. Created using the mysterious element X, they possess wondrous powers and abilities not understood even by their users. Metron stated that each mother box shares a mystical rapport with nature. They provide their owner with unconditional love and self-destruct when their owner dies. Mother boxes can access the energy of the source for various effects. They can, among other things, change the gravitational constant of an area, transfer energy from one place to another,
control the mental state of a host, communicate telepathically with a host or other life form, manipulate the life force of a host to sustain it past fatal injuries, open or close boom tubes, sustain a life form in a hostile environment such as space, return its host to life and heal extensively fatal injuries.
Yeah, they're pretty much magic boxes that can solve any problem. There are so many other characters I just won't have time to get into this video, but they're still awesome. Characters like Forager of the Bugs, or Mantis, the sinister bad guy, Glorious Godfrey and his somewhat mind control kind of abilities, the Black Racer, the embodiment of death, Light Ray, the fastest of the new gods, and Funky Flashman, the character Kirby created to vent his frustration with Stan Lee. Some folks think, myself included, that these comics represented Kirby's boldest bid to turn the superhero genre into a vehicle for ideas. The Fourth World's premise allowed Kirby to use his heroes allegorically, to represent basic issues which were very important to him. Unfortunately, Kirby was denied the chance to see his idea through to the end. Though he planned to tell his story in 18 issues, the Forever People and New Gods were canceled after only 11 issues. Kirby's plan would conclude the series with both Darkseid and Orion dead. DC editors prevented Kirby from using his original intended ending. Despite only stretching across about 40 issues, 11 of New Gods and Forever People, and 18 for Mr. Miracle, the characters have left a lasting impact, showing up still today in comics, shows, and movies. Grant Morrison commented, quote, "Kirby's dramas were staged across Jungian vistas of raw symbol and storm. The Fourth World saga crackles with the voltage of Kirby's boundless imagination let loose on paper." That's some pretty high-minded praise, but I'll just say they're great reads and even greater characters. I think this Kirby guy knew what he was doing. I could easily do 5 videos on the characters from the Fourth World saga, and perhaps as time goes on I will, but this was just a nice little skim along the surface. Thanks for watching the video. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Please subscribe so you get more videos about topics from comics and related media. Hit the bell for notifications so you never miss an episode. And until next time, remember, heroes are super.